and welcome to Superintendent's Roundtable. I'm Deb Vinsel, the CEO here at Thurston Community Media. And as you can see, things look a little different. This is our roundtable, and our superintendents are with us, but as you can see, we've spaced ourselves and we're wearing masks in recognition of COVID-19 protocols for safety. And I got to tell you that even without the roundtable and even with the mask, it is really wonderful to have you back here at the TCMedia studio to have this conversation about education in our communities. So let me introduce our guests. We have Patrick Murphy from the Olympia School District, Deborah Clemens from the North Thurston Public Schools, Brian Wharton from the Yelm Community Schools, and Sean Dotson from the Tumwater School District. So thank you for taking time out of what I know are busy schedules to come and be with us today. It's really delightful to see you all.
Thank you.
To really see you all. So
It's good to be here.
we've had a couple of opportunities to meet in a virtual world over the last year, and COVID has certainly impacted us as it has impacted our schools. So we're going to take a little time to talk about what's happening. But first, I want to offer congratulations to all of you for getting our students back into school safely at the start of the school year, which is just a couple of weeks ago. So Patrick, I think I'll start with you. How's it going?
Well, I just want to echo first, Deb, what you said, that it's wonderful to be here in person. We had one of our first superintendent meetings together this morning, earlier today, and we were remarking about how it's nice to be in person, that I don't have to remind you or you remind me that I'm on mute, that I froze. Just being able to see each other, even with the mask on, to pick up on different cues, I think it's hugely important. So thanks for having us back here to start.
Pleasure.
And I want to echo some of your sentiments too, Deb, about how wonderful it is to have our students back in school full-time, 5 days a week, for all those families that are seeking that. In the Olympia School District, I think we all started on September 8th, and I was able to get out to all of our schools. In fact, on the first day of school, I rode on one of our buses on that first day of school morning. It's a brand new electric bus. We have 4 of them in our fleet, no carbon footprint. And I was driving around with our driver, Jason, who's amazing, and pulling up to that first stop and just seeing those families of these elementary age kids just so excited. And when I told them, you're going to be the first ones to ride this electric bus, it was like they had won the lottery. They were so happy. And the parents were just so grateful to have them getting on the bus and going to school. And then just going around to schools all day those first couple days and hearing kids laughing and talking and arguing and playing and discussing, and seeing, even with masks on, the smiles in people's eyes behind their faces or on their faces was just, as I told these guys this morning, tonic for the soul. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just really just wonderful. And so it's not a normal start to the school year, Deb. It's not school like it was 2 or 3 years ago, but it's school, it's in person, it's kids with compassionate, caring, competent teachers, and they've been thirsting for that for over a year and a half now on a regular basis. And I couldn't be more grateful to all of our teams, our drivers and food service workers and teachers and paraeducators and office professionals and principals, because as you suggested, there's a lot of planning that went into this, but I couldn't be more happy that we've got our kids back in school.
Great. Deb, how's it going in North Thurston?
So a lot of first day of school experiences, that same excitement that we experience every year, we witnessed again this year. Many of the COVID-19 protocols that we put into place last spring when we started to bring our students back for in-person learning are actually lessened a little bit in terms of what we're doing this fall. So we're well prepared to follow all of the COVID-19 protocols. For North Thurston, we have 2 brand new schools that we opened this year. We opened Ignite Family Academy, which is a parent partnership program, and that was in response to families who chose to homeschool their children last year and wanted to continue with homeschooling, but maybe their children would benefit from the support of a certified teacher in developing a learning plan and opportunities for their students to participate in small group instruction. So Ignite Family Academy just opened this year, and I'm really pleased to offer that option for our families. The other brand new program school in North Thurston is Summit Virtual Academy, and that's an entirely online K-12 school. And I think all of us have experienced questions from parents as the Delta variant spread has increased throughout August. People becoming more worried about having their children in person. Most of our children are in person. But offering that opportunity, we're up to around 600 students in North Thurston Public Schools that have transferred to this entirely online school. And not only potentially COVID concerns that parents have, maybe they have a loved one in their home that they really can't take the risk of COVID coming into the home. But we had a lot of families who discovered that their children do quite well in an online learning environment. So we wanted to be able to continue to offer that opportunity for families who chose it.
Great. Well, congratulations on that. Brian, how's it going in Yelm?
A lot of what Patrick said, I would echo. Great to have the kids back. We are working really hard in the areas of transportation. We're a geographically huge district, so our kids are very dependent on bus traffic. So working on those protocols, our staff has done amazing work. Coming back from what we were in the spring to what we are now. Lunches are a wonderful challenge again, not just for the number of meals that we are serving, but just the students interacting and wanting to get it together in groups. But I got to all 9 schools the first day, and amazing level of let's get going, let's get back to learning. The kids realize they miss school, and we're tapping into that. And I'm just very pleased with how our entire organization has said, this is hard, but we're going to do it, and we're going to do it well. And we've been able to step into a really strong focus on instruction through all that. Couldn't be happier. I would be lying if I said there weren't challenges. It's hard to get food into our kitchens. It's hard to if we have a bus driver that has a cold today, then it has a huge impact on our whole organization. But none of that overshadows having the kids back in the classroom.
Right. We're going to talk about transportation a little bit later too. So, Sean, how's Tumwater doing?
Oh, you know, so the start of the school year, I think I just want to echo that sense of excitement that everyone has spoken to out there. Our students are so happy to be back in the classroom. Our staff, I had teachers who looked excited on that first day, just saying, I can't wait to have the kids in the, and they had kids in the spring, but just the idea of being back to a 5-day week with all of the students who want to be there and participate. We continue to have Tumwater Virtual Academy available this year for our families that prefer to stay online. But what I think we learned, and we did some surveys of our community over the summer around how do we help our students come back in and be successful this year? And what they said is, connection, get the kids connected with each other. They've missed that social connection. Anything you can do to help them connect back with each other, connect with their teachers in person, make that a priority. And let's do as much as we can in this wild environment to create a sense of normalcy of how do we get back to feeling like school is what school has always been for our students, and that is this place to connect with and workshop ideas and connect with teachers and connect with others. And so that's been our focus and priority, saying to our teachers, let's really work on building those connections, building relationships in those first weeks. That's important every year, but this year, all the more so. And so that's been one of our big priorities. And so I had the chance to go around to our schools in the first days, and our first days of school, it was a short week on the 8th, 9th, 10th, and we had our secondary schools in, but our elementary schools were engaging in what we called Strong Start conferences, and I know some of our other neighbors here have also done something similar, where our teachers, one of the things we learned last year when we were going remote, is we said, well, let's go ahead and have a parent conference right at the start of the year so our students and teachers can meet each other and connect and really have a relationship when the year began. It was necessary then, and it was so successful, they said, let's do it again. So we've done that again this year, and that has made so much difference. I've heard from parents, from teachers, that set the year off on a really positive note. So we just getting out to our schools and seeing those taking place, and then this past week, our students all back in the classroom has been wonderful.
I want to pick up on what Sean said. The family connection meetings that we started the school year with, actually we've been doing for years with kindergarten. So our kindergarten teachers meet with the family when the child's coming into kindergarten. And all of us, I think last year, because we were all starting remote, had those meetings to make sure the student had their Chromebook, knew how to log in, all of the logistics. And our teachers really appreciated getting to know the child and the family at the start of the school year. So we did that again this year, and in part because we had a lot of children that we didn't know exactly what their choice was last year during the pandemic. In kindergarten, children now going into first grade, some families kept them home and did homeschooling for the year. Some enrolled in private schools, some did online, other options. So I think that family connection meeting at the elementary level in particular was really helpful, and we started the year out that way as well. And I mean, it may be something, we keep thinking, coming out of COVID, what are we going to learn from all of this? I think the family connection meeting is one thing that might continue into the future as well.
Yeah, and sometimes you're presented with an opportunity you didn't know you had.
Right.
You know,
right.
and that's
Yeah.
This is one of them. Gentlemen, do either of you have other kind of similar experiences?
Yeah, I was thinking about our conversation before we came on the air, Deb, about, are there things that we're learning that are going to change the way we do business moving forward? Yeah. Deb and Sean both talked about their virtual academies. We've had an online learning program in Olympia for quite some time, but it was very small. I think I mentioned last year that a lot of our families are struggling when we first closed due to the pandemic, except we had this group of 100 that kept saying everything was great. And we were saying, oh, who is that? Oh, that's our iConnect families. Right. Well, just like Deb was describing North Thurston, we've expanded that to a virtual academy of Olympia this year. And there was a huge influx right before school started. Mm-hmm. So we're pushing over 500 students in the Olympia School District that are going into the virtual academy. And that takes a little bit of while to ramp up for the principal and the registrar and everybody, get everybody enrolled. But I do think that moving forward, all of our students are going to have online learning experiences regardless of their in-school experiences. I mean, places like Idaho and Florida have always said you need to have an online credit to graduate from high school. I mean, these are things where that's just the way we're going to learn, and it's going to give us flexibility. That's one thing. The other thing I forgot to mention, which is kind of a new thing in Olympia, is we implemented a flipped schedule this year where our secondary schools are starting later because of the research around adolescence and sleep, and our elementary schools are starting earlier before our secondary schools. I told these guys this morning, the reason why I think this is going relatively smoothly, and like Brian said, there's challenges. We've always got challenges, but is because we had the license and the permission to experiment last year. So last year when we were coming back in hybrid, we had our secondary kids come back later and our elementary kids come in earlier. So we kind of test drove it last spring. And so this year we've rolled it out, and our high schools and middle schools are starting later, our elementaries are starting earlier. That's a difficult thing, but I think it would have been much more difficult if we didn't have this ability to kind of do things outside the box. So I think there's potential here for us to continue to improve on what's always been a really important institution for our community.
Yeah. The other thing that I think when we coming out of COVID, that we've always known how important relationships are. I think for schools, we have adopted social emotional learning curriculums, and both last year and this year, it was the #1 priority to begin with building those connections, even though it was online, with children, and continuing to have that focus on social emotional learning because our children really need it. So going forward, we have a social emotional learning curriculum K-12 now. We use Character Strong, I think most of us do, in our secondary schools, and there's just tremendous buy-in to how important it is to take the time to build the social emotional learning skills of our students.
I've been really impressed with how that concept of building relationships has always been commonplace in our practice, but now it goes even further. And so for the first time as superintendent, our #1 social emotional need in our families is clothing. And you'll only learn that by really getting to know kids. It's not about just having fun activities in class, but how do you figure out what families need. We've put immense resources into our community outreach, trying to connect families and services, found a lot of families that were disconnected from medical services, dental and vision. Those are the kinds of relationships. And in our classrooms, we're focusing really, really hard on where are the students in their learning and where are they in their own mind about their own learning. That's a huge piece of social emotional learning, so that we can do both strong instruction and strong intervention if there are gaps that were developed over the last 18 months. So relationships means something very different, but it's something very improved in that definition as well.
I'd like to key on what you just said, though. We've all, I think everybody has, everybody in general has expressed concern about the, quote, learning gap.
Yeah.
And I realize we're only like, what, 2.5 weeks into the school year. So are you seeing evidence that did in fact happen?
We, so we're really grateful, I have to say, for all viewers, that ESSER funds, the federal funding that we received, has been so important and helpful, not only in covering all of the additional personal protective equipment expenses that we have in schools, but also to provide specific programs to address missed learning. And in North Thurston, we assessed students towards the end of last school year and identified students for summer programming. So to answer your question about this fall, we're just starting that assessment again of all students, but based on our end of year assessment, we offered a summer program from first grade through 12th grade over the summer, the largest we've ever done before. In previous years, we had a 3rd grade reading program. We had like a jump start to math from middle school to high school, and then a high school credit recovery program. We've never done something as large as what we did this summer. And that was specifically because we had the dollars from the federal government in order to provide this kind of intervention programming. And we partnered with the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Together, Lacey Parks and Rec. So we took care of the kind of academic part of the day, and then they assisted with the activities and the physical activities outside and both in gymnasiums and making it fun for students to want to come. We served about 700 students over the summer. Yeah.
Interesting. Anybody else have similar?
Similarly, yes, we ran the biggest summer programs we've ever run for the same reasons. We had that opportunity and really focused on summer enrichment, trying to find ways, once again, to build connections between students, and made that the priority, and saying it's not going to look like the normal school day, really project focused, get the kids into activities, but have learning behind that to help them start to catch up. And then as we did those Strong Start conferences the first days at elementary, another thing we incorporated into that was we had all our classified staff conducting assessments with our students on those days as well, so that usually our first weeks of school we're assessing our students so we can identify students who need additional assistance and build intervention groups. In those first 3 days, we already had a read on where our kids were, so we could come in and our interventionists could hit the ground running with groups right off the bat. And I think a quicker start to that is part of our plan to say, we're building relationships in the classroom and then getting those interventions going right away to help students who do need extra help. But one of the things I want to say is that it was so impressive, and I think one of our celebrations is how much learning occurred last year, despite all of those disruptions, despite being in remote and a 2-day hybrid and a 4-day hybrid. We really saw tremendous learning take place. And I think it tells us just how flexible and resilient our students are, how flexible and resilient our staff are in managing the complexities of all those different environments. So we did see a lot of learning take place and a lot of kids that are far further along than we even thought was possible given the year we had. And so that's a fantastic celebration, something I think we need to acknowledge.
That's great.
Yeah.
In our K-8 assessment data, we do benchmarking 3 times a year, and it showed that our kids started a little bit below a typical year. So there might have been some COVID impact from March of 2020, but they made growth equal to a normal year, which means that they ended up slightly below a typical year. And that launched a lot of our summer activities. At the high school level, we saw some kids that had real struggles finishing classes. So we did a lot of credit retrieval work, credit completion work over the summer. I think we recovered about 125 classes. Got, I think, 20% of our senior class got back on track this summer, which is a nice number. But we did a program called Teaching on the Towel because we couldn't use several of our elementaries. They were being, HVACs were being renovated. So we went out to housing developments and they let us use their clubhouses outside, and they would bring their towel, plop it down on the grass, and we'd work on literacy and math. Very popular. And then we also did a program called STEM Camp, which was funded through Department of Defense, grades 3 through 8. And it was a week-long indoor-outdoor science, technology, engineering program. And the kids got to come in on Friday with their parents, and they taught them how they built conveyor belts and did all the different things that they struggled with in a good way throughout the week. So it built energy, but it allowed us, like Sean was saying, to get to know kids that we hadn't seen as much as we wanted to over the course of remote and hybrid instruction. So it's, I still think we have work to do. I know we have work to do, but we're in a much better position to get at that work than what we thought probably around November of last year. Yeah.
And the ESSER funds, the federal funding that we've all received, we have until 2024 to expend those dollars. So all of us are planning interventions throughout the school year. What Sean mentioned about assessing students and then getting them into interventions. So that will continue throughout the school year with before school, during lunch, after school tutoring and direct services, as well as next summer's summer school, I expect to be as big, if not bigger, than what we did this past summer.
I think I would just add one piece that what we're all talking about here, and I'll have a lot of common stories to what we're hearing in the other 3 districts. These are all part of our required state plan that we all submitted back on June 1st. And there's 2 parts to that plan that we all had to address: academics and student well-being. And so it sort of goes back to that entire thing that our students can't learn the math or the reading or the science or the social studies if they're socially, emotionally, physically, or mentally not healthy. And strong teachers have always known that. You know, if a kid had somebody that died in the family over the weekend, it's probably not a good day to give them that math test on that Monday, right? And what we learned is that these adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, you know, that they have an impact on kids' ability to learn. And the great thing is the science and the research says we can actually overcome those experiences if we put the right supports in place. And basically, there's an understanding around most mental health officials that every kid in America has at least one ACE right now, an adverse childhood experience, and it's called COVID. And so what are those things that we're doing is all written out in our plan. We have it, I'm sure we all have it on our websites to look at all the different things, and we're using those ESSER dollars to address social emotional needs so that we can meet those academic needs. Olympia, we see similar things, a lot of really important learning and good learning that happened, but pockets, places where it didn't happen as much because it's just an unequal playing field in our homes that our families experienced. We feel really fortunate that we got those ESSER dollars to put some things in place that we've talked about on your show, Deb, long before COVID that we wanted to get in place. Mental health has been an issue long before the pandemic ever arrived, and we've added social workers, we've added family liaisons at all of our elementary schools with those ESSER dollars that help families in crisis. On the first day of school, I met a family that recently immigrated from Palestine, and our family liaison was fluent in Arabic and was having a conversation with that family just arrived. We wouldn't have had that without the ESSER dollars there. You know, we have a partnership with the Together organization we've all partnered with in various ways that we've used those resources to do that, again, because they've been helping kids for a long time with social emotional needs. So there's a side of me, I keep talking about the silver lining of COVID, that we're learning new ways to meet the needs of students and families, and at least temporarily we're getting some resource to do some things that we wouldn't have been able to do before, because we've talked about funding on the show many, many times.
The other new resource that we all have is free lunches for all of our students.
Yep.
So I think most people know that when schools closed in 2020, all of our lunch service programs stepped up and provided meals to families throughout the school closure, continued throughout the summer, and then last year. Everything from meal kits that families would come pick up once a week to a daily breakfast and lunch. And going into this year, although there's still some service requirements to provide children with choices around what they eat. Any child can come up and have a free meal. And although we're still encouraging families to fill out the paperwork, because when they qualify, we can waive other fees for them, and that's always a help to families.
It's important to know.
I just might add, I think one of the other things that we're all seeing is that if you think of things from an asset-based, what we have this year is a staff and students who are more technologically literate than any group we've had before as a whole group. I mean, I've seen first graders and second graders sharing screen with teachers when they were in remote learning. Now they all have those skills. People know how to communicate and collaborate in ways they never have before over distance. I mean, the ability to bring a guest speaker in isn't limited by geography. You don't need them to walk into the classroom. We can pop them up because every classroom is set up to communicate over distance. So we have cameras and sound and the ability to do that in ways no one had ever really played with before.
Right.
So I think it opens up some capabilities that I'm excited to see how that evolves as we go forward. Every classroom having an online classroom as well, where when a student's absent, it's not hard to figure out what's going on in class. We always have students who are out sick or out for other things. They all know now how to go to a Google Classroom or Schoology and take a look at that and know what they're missing and how to keep up.
I had a young person once say to me, "Yeah, snow days are never going to be the same." I laughed. I said, "Well, I'm thinking, maybe." And it has been. I mean, that has been an impact of just COVID, not just on the schools, obviously, but just on us as a society in general. That people have had to embrace technologies in ways that they never had to before. And it's like my 93-year-old mother, I call her on the phone and she's like, "I really want a Zoom." It's like, okay, we'll set up a Zoom, So it just makes such a huge difference, to have that visual connection with people. But it's true, our community, our children, our parents and grandparents are all using technology in ways they never anticipated. So
one thing that we had talked about was issues with transportation.
Yeah.
And to Sean's point around technology, we've had to cancel our field experiences. We normally take our kindergartners out to the pumpkin patch to go to Hunter Farms and have that tied to their science curriculum. And we're going all virtual with our field experiences this fall, because we really don't have enough bus drivers to do our to and from school transportation in addition to our field trips. So we made that decision as we were seeing the shortage and the number of applicants we have for bus driving positions, that we needed to change, how we were planning to provide those experiences for our students.
Well, and that's a great segue into this conversation, because we mentioned it earlier. It seems that transportation for school districts everywhere is challenging right now because of a lack of personnel. So
the interesting thing, Deb, is like we were talking about before, mental health needs for kids did not arrive with the pandemic. Our bus driver shortage did not arrive with the pandemic either. It just got highlighted big time and now is in like desperate mode. In fact, a recent national survey of transportation directors in school districts across the country, over half, 51%, say their driver shortage is either severe or desperate. The state of Massachusetts just called out the National Guard, 250 guards people driving buses. It has not been something we've been immune from in Olympia. Anytime a driver is sick, if there's a COVID quarantine, we do not have subs to back them up. And it's contrary to what we want to do, because we want to space people out. And the fewer drivers that you have to bunch people up on a bus, which is allowable by the procedures and the policies from the state. But if we had more drivers, we could do more of that. We have the buses, we just don't have the drivers. And so we're having kids late to school, late to pick kids up and get them home from school. I mean, it's remarkable what our transportation team has been able to pull off, but it's been a huge difficulty.
do we know why these jobs are going unfilled?
Amazon.
Oh.
And that's one reason. There's the whole industry, if you talk, it's not just schools, any sort of industry with driving, there's huge supply shortages everywhere, because the whole world is changing to delivering goods to home instead of into a hub somewhere. And so Amazon is one of the places that's taking a bunch of drivers. A lot of our drivers were retired individuals. There's masking requirements,
Right.
there's vaccination requirements, there's things where they're like, I wanted a little bit extra money here, but this is something maybe I didn't want to sign up
Well,
for.
and they may just be more COVID cautious too.
It might be
you
more
know,
COVID
so,
cautious.
Yeah, so.
It goes a
Yeah.
little bit further. In our district, we have the exact number of drivers we need to cover our routes. So what we don't have the capacity to do is deal with a change that day. So for example, if we get a student who is homeless from one of the other districts and we have to transport, that's a route we didn't have the day before. Now covering that route becomes very, very difficult. Or a new special ed student comes into our district and we have to allocate a bus that has a lift in it. All of a sudden now we're short. And sometimes we don't know we're short until a day later, or a day before, sorry. We've had to prioritize getting kids to and from school over athletics. So we're allowing families to drive their kids to performances. And like Patrick was talking about, you get a COVID case or you get someone who's not feeling well that day, and we want them to stay home when they're not feeling well. Now we're short a bus driver, and that causes us to split routes or consolidate routes, which creates huge confusion for families, because if they're expecting bus 6 to come home and bus 8 brings their kid home that day, that's stressful, and we're doing okay, but it's not how we would really prefer to do it. We'd love to have another bank of 10 substitute drivers that we can plug in to those unique circumstances of a day, but they're not there right now.
We're about 10 drivers short right now of having what we need to reliably transport our students every day and without disruption, and it's the same thing. There's no substitutes. Everyone in the transportation office who has their CDL is driving every day, so we have a few people there to man phones and assist and take care that are not our drivers. Yesterday I was scheduled to drive a student, actually, and then I had an emergency meeting came up, so our assistant superintendent drove one of our students. And that is where we are. It's all hands on deck. Everyone is trying to help in every way we can to make sure we get our kids safely to and from school. And there's just, we've sought, can we contract with can we find contracts with someone who's got drivers? We're trying every opportunity or every option we have. We took someone from our human resources department, and they're an assistant director in transportation right now and have been doing job fairs over the summer. I know we partnered with some of our local districts to do radio advertising. So we've been recruiting in ways we've never recruited before. But the labor supply is just not there right now, and so we're sending out messages to our community every day saying, if you're interested in driving or willing to be trained, we're ready to train you. So.
Right, and you heard that here. These jobs are very. So I'm presuming people could just go to your websites to find out about the availability and process and all that. So
Absolutely.
we'll have website information at the end of the program. So let's talk, we've got a few minutes left, obviously. Let's talk about new projects and capital stuff. I know you opened a new middle school.
We opened Yale Middle School for 700 students, grades 6 through 8. It's a beautiful complex, and it was an amazing accomplishment to get that building finished during COVID. Fight through some supply chain issues, but just ecstatic about the new building. The kids love it. Big wide hallways, they don't feel cramped like they did in their old building. We're using that old building as an elementary school for 1 year, so Southworth and their staff moved into the old middle school while we're building a new Southworth, and that building will open next fall. So lots of construction going on. We completed 7 safety projects at our other schools as part of our 2019 bond. If there was a silver lining, I think Patrick mentioned silver lining, is that COVID did bring the construction market back down to some semblance of normal. So we saved a little bit of money, and that allowed us to do several more projects over the summer. We have to do all of our middle school athletics at one school this year. So we built a new track and field there so that they could have a quality surface to play on. But yeah, opening a new school is very nerve-wracking in a great way, but we had a kid who I think the administrators knew pretty well from previous time. He came in and he just goes, "You guys did this for us?" And it was just like, yeah, we did. The community did this for you. And the kids appreciate it, and they really like being in that new school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many students are served in that school?
700.
700 kids
Yeah.
in that middle school. That's great. Anybody else have construction projects? Patrick?
It's interesting, Deb, because we had some construction projects that were finished, and we were opening up some brand new elementary schools that had these remodels done, and then COVID hit. So we had these beautiful buildings that nobody went into, that they aren't new construction, but for the first time they're being filled with kids at McLean and Centennial and Roosevelt and different schools across our district. But our most up-to-date construction projects that are going on are at our high schools. Capitol High School is a brand new theater that's just about done, not quite finished yet, and right down the road here. I think it's going to be probably the top performing arts complex in Thurston County when it's all done. It's absolutely beautiful, and did some renovations inside the school itself to get it back up to speed. And then in Olympia High School, we added like 23 classrooms there, science wings to get portables off campus. We added a new practice field for soccer and football and outdoor activities. So really neat. We've got another project coming up at Avanti because we moved to the district office, and now Avanti High School can get going. That should be happening probably in the middle of this year. And before I'm done, I just wanted to say I got to tour Brian's middle school today, and it's beautiful. And one of the things that I loved about it was the way that they partnered with the Nisqually and their tribal partners there. Indigenous languages throughout, really recognizing the First Peoples in the area, at the same time recognizing the history of Yelm. And I think that we all have opportunities to do that when we engage in these projects. And I just thought that was done beautifully.
Right. Anybody else?
Yeah, so we have, so we passed a $275 million bond in 2020, February, right before we closed school in March. And the silver lining of COVID is that a lot of those projects we were able to get started on right away because we didn't have students on campus. We have a brand new turf field at Timberline High School that opened probably 6 months earlier than it would have because we were able to get in there and do the renovation of the fields while students weren't on campus. And so that project was supposed to start a little bit later. We got that done. Pleasant Glade Elementary School construction completed. A brand new early learning center at Pleasant Glade Elementary. Again, that wrapped up last year and was completed a lot earlier than we would have normally been able to do it. A brand new field there as well. And Aspire Performing Arts Academy is undergoing a major renovation with a beautiful new science modular complex installed at that site. Still under construction, will be probably ready for occupancy in October. And I think we've all experienced some supply issues with regard to construction, as well as food supplies and other issues that other industries or businesses are also experiencing. And the two big projects we have coming up includes the modernization of Camachin Middle School, and that was part of the 2020 bond. Construction is full speed ahead there. Most of our construction projects happen while school is in session. So we take a section of the building and we fence it off and begin construction. Unfortunately, the very first day of school, our principal was welcoming students in, and the construction workers set off a fire alarm. So all of the children gathered out on the field, and advisory happened very differently that morning. That's part of what happens when you are doing construction and you do have school going on at the same location, but going very well. Beautiful design that we're looking forward to seeing how that's all going to work out. And then River Ridge High School has a major planning and modernization going on, and so we'll be excited to share more in the future. It's just in the planning stages right now, working with the architects, but it's going to be awesome.
Exciting. How about Tumwater?
Our projects have been a little bit smaller in some areas. We're coming to the end of a bond that we passed, our community passed in 2015, and a couple of the big projects there. We remodeled the performing arts centers at both Black Hills High School and Tumwater High School. Black Hills finished just before the pandemic. In fact, I went and saw Mamma Mia there, and it was so amazing to see it in this incredible new performing arts center with the quality lighting and technology and sound. It just made such a difference, and I think was so good for kids. And now Tumwater High School's just finished at the beginning of this year. So I've had the chance to come in and see some meetings in there and can't wait to see a performance at some point soon. But we have a number of smaller projects, fire sprinkler systems that were added at Black Lake Elementary, and we're doing intercom and emergency communication system updates in a number of our buildings. And Black Hills High School had the chance, we do some repainting of the school and cosmetic updates through the halls and outside, and it just really looks fantastic. So I think while our students were gone, our maintenance staff and our teams were doing everything they could to make all the repairs and upgrades and updates. So when you walk into our schools, they just look fantastic to start the year, and that's I think it's a nice way to welcome our kids back.
And that is the silver lining, you know, as you've all said, because it's so much easier to do that stuff when you're not working around school schedules and all that. You come in, you get it done faster, and maybe better. You know, and then you have these beautiful facilities for your students when they come back. Well, okay, so in our last few minutes, I want to talk a little bit about, and we kind of have hit on some of them, those just, you know, sunshine moments that you've experienced in the last couple of weeks with the start of school. So, Patrick, I'm gonna start with you.
You know, there's been so many for the reasons that we said, because we've all been longing for this for so long, and we have our students back in school. You know, there's none that stand out to me, but maybe this one is a good story because it relates to the construction and how we've been away for so long. But I was at Olympia High School on the first day of school, and you know, they put me to work when I'm there. You know, I have a little map, and I have classrooms because kids don't know where they're going to go. Particularly, I'm thinking freshmen don't know where to go. So I'm out there and I'm in the hallway, and a young lady walks by and she said, "Do you know where room 407 is?" And I said, "Yeah, we can find room 407. I said, "That's right here. Actually, it's right down here. I'll walk with you." And I said, "So, what's it like to be a freshman here at Olympia High School?" She said, "I'm a junior." And that's how long she had been out of school.
Yeah.
And 407 was part of the new construction. So she didn't know where any of this stuff was. And so, I mean, that's just an example of noting how long we've been gone,
right,
and coming back, and just what a wonderful opportunity we have to re-engage in this work. And like we've been saying all along, to do it in such a way that we go back and not go back to normal, but go back to better. This is what we've always been saying. What did we learn from what we've done so that we can continue to do that work well? We are committed in Olympia, when we're doing this screening process that we were talking about, to find out where our students are, and maybe there is some delayed learning, but also where they are social emotionally, that we're constantly disaggregating that data, because the pandemic impacted communities differently, you know, depending on their finance, depending on race, all sorts of things. And so again, really keeping that equity lens at the forefront of what we're doing as we work our way back to this better model. It's just something I'm very proud that our school board and our district is committed to, and I'm just really grateful to our teachers and all of our staff for bringing our kids back with such compassion and such competence.
Great. Sean, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah, certainly. I would say, I'm echoing some of what Patrick said. I was also helping students find their classrooms and on the first days of school, which was, for me, I joined as superintendent in the year the pandemic started. So I had this limited time before it shut down. So like our students, I'm still learning where all the classrooms are for different things. And so it was a good learning experience for me. But one of my favorite moments in the first day of school was as I was walking the halls, and I was walking some students to class and helping them find their classrooms, is seeing our teachers out at our middle school. So our teachers, just the beaming faces as they're helping kids figure out how to open their lockers, for example. And just what our teachers said, and I heard from our students, is it's so great to have the normal problems you deal with on a first day of school. To be helping kids figure out their combination and where their classroom is and building those connections. And so walking into classrooms and seeing kids engaged in team building activities where they were getting that chance to connect, it just, that's how school should be. And I've been so amazed by how everyone's adapted to everything we've gone through. And it's so nice to be able to give our students this opportunity to be back, to give them the chance to connect in the ways that we know how to do education best. So that's just, that's my celebration as we start this year, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity.
Great. Brian.
Hard time narrowing it down. Some of the really exciting things is all of our second grade students this year are able to go to this really incredible place called Camp of the Cascade. It's up north of Yelm, or south of Yelm, sorry. And that's where we've chosen this year to launch our social emotional learning, where the kids get to do that through an outdoor experience. And just to see the kids sprinting off a bus and, getting to go and get up close to a goose and see, shoot, they got to, they're not really arrows, but they got to practice archery and things like that. But at the same time, doing some social emotional lessons, that was powerful. We did get a letter from a family that was new to Yelm on the first day of school, and it did happen at Yelm Middle School, where this parent recognized that opening a new school and the first day of school, that's kind of a recipe for slow traffic or whatever. And she sent a note to the principal and said, our daughter came home and they've never been that happy, and they've never felt so welcomed and so supported at a school. And said, you guys are making a difference. So that we shared that as an admin team. And then I think lastly, we opened up the day before, or the weekend before school started, with a football game. And we had a massive problem because we didn't have enough seats for everybody. And so we were spreading the folks around the standing room only area, but just to hear our community get to cheer for their football team, that was really amazing. And that's a big deal in Yelm every Friday night. So I really focus on those. Those are several of many.
Those are great things to focus on. Last but not least.
So we have a tradition of kicking off the year with a district theme, and this year our theme is including everyone. And I think, as Brian was just sharing, having our children reconnect to their school community, having a sense of purpose and a strong sense of belonging, comes because of all those co-curricular and athletic activities that we offer our students. And many of our students got very limited opportunities last year. So, for me, it's at the volleyball game, all of the students coming in, cheering for their classmates who are out on the court, parents in the stands again. At the soccer game last night, the same experience. We've missed it, and we're really excited to have our kids back and have our students have the opportunity to not just learn the academics, which is so important, but also all of those other life skills. Another announcement that just came on Monday is we have the Washington State Teacher of the Year selected from North Thurston Public Schools, Jared Koepp. And I would just share that Jared is not only an amazing teacher, amazing educator, he also was really instrumental in the partnership that we now have as a school district with the Nisqually tribe. If you drive by our schools, you'll see that the Nisqually tribal flag flies at each of our schools. That if you attend a board meeting or another significant event, you'll hear a land acknowledgement. Jared was a big part of all of those pieces coming together. Our board of directors meets twice a year with the tribal council because we're really dedicated to all children having a sense of belonging, connection to their school community, including all of our Native students. And so really proud of Jared for receiving that recognition.
And I've read the article about it. His role with the district is Indigenous students, to work with Indigenous students in their culture. Yeah, well, congratulations on that. And again, congratulations to all of you for successfully reopening our schools with our students safely there. Best of luck as the school year unfolds. I'm thrilled to be able to say welcome back to the TC Media studio. It's been really wonderful to see you all and have you all here. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. Remember, if you're the parent of a preschool child, read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to prepare them for education. And while you're at it, throw in some fun counting games to get them curious about math. If you're the parent of a school-age child, whether or not they're in a classroom or doing a virtual class, get involved with your child's education. Your child's teacher or principal can show you ways that you can involve yourself. Go to your school's website to find out about volunteer opportunities or to the district websites for more information. And you know, if you might be interested in driving a bus, you might check that website out for the job opportunities. Come help our schools be successful by helping our students. Thank you for joining us here at the Superintendent's Roundtable. I'm thrilled to welcome you all back. I'm Deborah Vinsel. For our staff and volunteers, we'll see you next time.